There are a lot of things that are happening in our world today, in our society, in the world, and especially in Israel. Because of this, there were students in our school that had questions. Because we are a Christian school, we have a specific time, a Bible time, and we're able to talk about this. Today, we gave an impromptu lesson on the historical events that happened all the way back from Abraham, through David, through Jesus, and even after, where the Jewish people were sent all over the world. And then the World War II and the events leading up to today. I hope that you're blessed by this talk and by the things that we shared. We're going to begin with the promise of Abraham. That's where we're going to go. We're going to go as far as Abraham. God sees one man. He says, this man right here is so like attuned with me out of everybody in the world that I'm going to choose this person. He tells Abraham, move from where your parents are, move from Ur of the Chaldeans. That's modern day Kuwait. Modern day Kuwait. For those of you, I've actually been to war, and I've been to that place. That's where I was stationed. I was stationed there in the desert. He says, move there, and he tells them to move, but he doesn't tell them where. So every single time Abraham is moving, and all the time he says, wherever you move, that's going to be yours. And there's many times in the Bible that he tells them, everything that you step on, that's going to be yours. Keep walking. He walks everywhere. He ends up where is now present-day Israel. That's where he ended up at. So from Kuwait, and if we had a map, I wish I had brought a map. From Kuwait, he walks all the way to the present-day Israel. But it wasn't Israel at the time. There was other nations. Not other nations. There were people, like nomads, that they were there. They were there, and he was with them. He was kind of friends with them. They would visit him, and he was very rich. He was very liked at this time. If you guys remember the Lot story, Lot moves away, but he stays there, and everybody likes Abraham. We don't say about this story a lot, but Abraham actually picks up an army and goes to save Lot. He saves Lot many times, actually. And he picked up an army because people liked Abraham. He was very liked in the area, and he was friends, and he was very wealthy. Many years later, Abraham gets big. His people get big. Isaac has more kids. And as you know, that's the 12 tribes of Israel. They go into Egypt because there was no food. There was no food in where they were, so they end up in Egypt asking for food. Thank God that even though Joseph was sent to Egypt in the wrong way, right? Do you guys remember that story? He was sold by his own brothers, and that was bad itself. But he ends up in Egypt. But Egypt was it saved them. Because at that time, they didn't have food. So if it wasn't for Joseph, they wouldn't have been saved. So all of Abraham's family, everybody who followed Abraham lived in Egypt. There was nobody left in Israel or in that place. It wasn't called Israel yet. And there was nobody left around that place. They all left Egypt. When they're in Egypt, they grow even bigger. They multiply a lot. They multiply so much that the Pharaoh, what did the Pharaoh do? Enslaved them. He said, these guys are going to go bigger than us. If they grow bigger than us, they're going to overtake us. So we're not going to allow that. They started trying to kill the kids, the babies. Remember that? They tried to kill the babies. Question so far?
I'm sorry. I didn't know if my phone is going to die, so can I just switch off?
Yeah, you can switch off. You'll still be our official person. Official Google looker-upper. Thank you. Actually, you can look up this fact already since we have official people. Look up, Brooke, you can look up how many people went into Israel with Joseph. And Jude, you're going to look up how many people left Egypt with Moses. And we're going to see that number difference. And the years that they were there for over 400 years. Joseph took 70 people, okay. And when they left, Jude, how many people left Egypt?
It says, accordingly, the original 600,000 Israelites left Egypt.
So from 70 to 600,000. So 70 people, just to kind of give you an idea, in this school we have about 120 fluctuating students, fluctuating up and down. So a little bit less than our school. 600,000, that's like many stadiums. For the people who went to NAYC lately, that was only 35,000. I mean, even though it was 35,000, but now we're talking about 600,000. It's 35,000 a lot, but 600,000 is a lot more than 35,000. Just to give you an idea, right, of how many people left Israel. They were enslaved, but they left. Now, here's the thing. When they left, where were they going? They were going to the promised land. God said, you will go to the promised land. Whose promised land? God promised that land to Moses and to Abraham. He said, this is going to be your land. And that's what Moses knew. Take them to the promised land. He knew that that's where they were going. On the way there, some people didn't believe. Some people, they had a slavery mentality. They were the slaves. Like they thought they were slaves, and they couldn't think of their mind outside of that. They were slaves in their mind. Even though they were free already, they crossed the river, they were still slaves. So they go to the other side, and they just can't make it. So God, he says, you know what? He doesn't tell this to the Israelites. He says, you know what? I'm going to have to cleanse everybody. Most of you guys are probably going to die in the desert just so we could get a new generation that is better and believes in the promise. Everybody of that generation dies. The only two that survive is Joshua and Caleb. Everybody who left Egypt died in the desert. Everybody, 600,000 died, including Moses, died in the desert. The people who entered the new promised land were all brand new people who were born after or younger, and they were just too young to remember this being a slave. When they go, remember Moses didn't make it, so Joshua takes them into the promised land. He takes them in. When he takes them into the promised land, and this is something we kind of never talk about, is there were people at that promised land. There were people living there. It wasn't a country. It was different little pieces of pockets of people. Some of those people living there were cousins and distant cousins of Israel. I'll give you one. Remember going back to Isaac and Jacob? Isaac has two sons. Isaac has two sons, which were called Jacob, who became Israel, right? And the other son, remember with the birthright? Esau. Esau has his own kids, and believe it or not, he has also 12 kids. He's 12 kids. So Jacob has his own 12 kids, birthing the nation of Israel. Jacob becomes the name, he takes on the name Israel. God gives him that name. And then Esau also has 12 children, and all those children become their little pockets of people. So, kind of fast forward a lot actually. Those people are cousins, they're distant cousins of Israelites. And then there's more. Lot, I don't know if you know this story, but Lot also had other kids. He had more kids. And those kids had their own kids, and they became their pockets of people as well. And all those people they come from Abraham. They actually still come from Abraham. So, even though the promise was to the Israelites, and it definitely is for the Israelites first, Esau had a promise as well. He gave up his birthright. It would have been him, but he gave up. But God still blessed them. He said, you will still be blessed. Isaac still blessed them. If you remember, he goes back into the tent. He says, can't you give me anything? And he says, I can't give you the same blessings I gave to Jacob, but I will give you blessings, financial blessings, and a different type of blessing. So Esau was still blessed, and he still grew. And those were the people that when Israel came back, remember that they always had to fight against some people? Samson's story, the Saul story. They was always fighting against people. Even Joshua, they had to fight. And those were the people that they were fighting. They were fighting their own cousins and distant relatives that lived in that land. But the land was always Israel's. It was always Abraham's first. Now, here's the hard part. And I'm going to tell you, and I know you heard this story before. At one time, God tells Saul, kill all these people, even including the king. Do you guys remember that story? Mm-hmm. And Saul doesn't. And I think nowadays we think about that story and you think that's harsh. Like, you got to kill. God is telling them to kill even everything, even the sheep and the goats and even the animals. So that includes babies, that includes the adults, that includes moms, dads. He said kill everybody, the king, everybody. And that came from God himself. And I think that's harsh. Even nowadays you're like, wow, that's so hard. God said that? God did say that. But I think the foreshadowing of now, and even in the Bible, and I think we started going to speak about that, right? Next week, is that there are people who are either going to kill you and you're going to be gone, or you got to get rid of them first. And that's kind of where we're living in now. And I know this seems harsh in our American United States reality, is because in the United States, our idea is that everybody lives, everybody is okay with each other, you're friends with everybody. And that's awesome. And I believe in that. I definitely fight for that. I fight for freedom. Everybody has their rights. I agree with that. However, back then, in old times, that was not the case. That was not the mentality. There wasn't like a government. There wasn't like a police. Hey, police, can you come help me out? Because, my neighbor robbed my store, or I got robbed by this, or somebody hijacked my car, and you call a cop now. There wasn't a cop. They would just take your stuff, kill you, and nobody will come and help you. Nobody will come and help you. Like you said, you're dead. So that's why God said to them, he said, you have to get rid of these people, because these people right here, their mentality is just torn apart. Torn apart. We will fast forward in a little bit, but I kind of want to move forward. So in that times, it was still the judges' time. It was the Samson time. There was no king, all right? But at that point, God said, you know what, we got to get some prophets here. And he starts sending some good prophets. Samuel was one of the big ones, that he was a great prophet. And the people loved Samuel. They did. They loved him. But what did they say to Samuel? They said, Samuel, we can't keep living with just prophets. The people called for a king. And what they were calling for is an organized government, is really what they kind of wanted. And God said, you know what? Samuel said this first. Samuel says this, oh, they don't want me. And God says to Samuel, it's not really that they don't want you. It's really that they don't want me. God says this to Samuel. It's because God was taking care of them all the time, but they kind of still wanted a government. God says, fine, I'm going to give you a government. Saul is going to be your new king. You all know the story of Saul. It doesn't work out with him. But David comes on the scene, and David becomes the unifier of all the tribes. When I say tribes, I mean the 12 tribes. Even though they're all Israelites, you know how you fight with your cousins? Mm-hmm. You fight with your brother and your sister? Okay. So it's the same idea. It's the same idea. Family reunions are just crazy. So it's really hard. Or even family reunions, actually, in that case, you know how you have big families? Does everybody come to the family reunions? No. Never. It never happens. You want them, and they never happen. So here's what happened. It was really hard to get all of them together. And finally, David was starting to do that. David, by the end of his life, did do that. But there was still a lot of fighting. And actually, if you remember the story about David, is that his own son tried to kill David. His own son tried to kill David, Absalom. And there were actually another one that we'll talk about another time. So they were still fighting inside of the house of David, still fighting. Solomon comes on the scene. Now, Solomon was wise. He unified everybody. He got everybody under one roof, and everybody in the world loved Solomon. He was very gracious with giving, and everybody gave to him. So it was like this free flow of ideas, free flow of economy. Everybody loved them. Trade. But then a lot of stuff happened after Solomon that broke up Israel. Israel gets broken up again. And here is the first time that God tells Israel, not the first time, but the first time that it happened, he tells Israel, if you don't follow my commandments, you guys are going to be broken up and going to be spread all over the world. So he breaks up Israel because they're not listening, just like us, we don't listen. He breaks up Israel. And Israel is taken all over the world by Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar breaks up Israel, destroys it, just levels all of Israel. And he takes everybody in Israel enslaved. This is where we get the Daniel story. Daniel was a slave, basically. He was a slave. He was a smart slave. He was a wise slave, but he was a slave. He was captive in Babylon. Many years later, the people of Israel find grace in the kings, Daniel being one of them, and they let some people come back to Israel. They said, hey, we took your land, we took you away, but you guys are good people. We'll let you go back to your land. And they let the Israelites start rebuilding their land again. They let them go back. You guys could go back. We're going to be nice to you. And they let them build the temple. Now, the first temple was the King Solomon temple. That was beautiful. They said it was so big, so majestic inside and out. But they destroyed it because they had a lot of gold in it. So they disseminated that thing and they destroyed it. They tried to rebuild the second temple. They did it, but it was not the same as the first temple. They tried to rebuild Israel, but it was never the same as it was when it was King Solomon, ever. It wasn't the same. Now, when they went back, again, people have moved back into the land of Israel. There were people that did not want Israel to come back because they had, imagine somebody next door, you're looking for a house, and the person next door moves out the house and never comes back. And you're like, whoa, this house is like free. Can I just go over there and live there?
No.
There are laws in the United States that you can't really do that. But again, in those times, there were no laws. You left, you're gone, your house can be mine. So they just move into the house. And hold on a second, now you're going to come back and kick me out the house? Now this house is mine. You left. Yeah, but I got captive. I don't care. You left. So that was the situation back in the time of Nehemiah and Jeremiah. That was the time that they were fighting those battles of going back to Israel, taking away, and all that, in the time of the prophets. Many years later, they were able to construct and build and build and build. But then they were still fighting because the Greeks took over Israel. The Greeks took over Israel, and they destroyed it, but they kind of let it live. And after that, they were like, yay, no more wars. Then the Romans came, and the Romans were brutal. And they were trying to destroy the Israel people. Actually, more than destroy them, they were trying to get money from them. They were trying to control them. They didn't want to destroy them. They just wanted them to pay up. The Israelites had no option but to pay up. And that's why they didn't like Matthew. Because Matthew was a Jewish person that worked. He was a tax collector for the Romans. So the Israel people had to pay the Romans money. And Matthew was one of them that tax collected for the Romans. But then he converted and he followed Jesus. But that's why they didn't really like Matthew too much at the beginning. Because he was a tax collector. Now Jesus came on the scene. And the people who were in Jesus' time, they were looking for the Messiah. Who is the Messiah? The Messiah, we know that is Jesus. But what was this Messiah supposed to do? Jesus, or the Messiah, it was supposed to redeem the Israelites, was to come as a king, was to take out people from captivity. And Jesus did all that. But the difference is that the Israelites, they wanted to see it happen like a King David kind of thing. But that's not really what Jesus meant. Jesus meant that he would save us of our sins. Now in the future, going way more forward, Jesus will do that. He will come as a conquering king. But at that time, that's not what we needed. We needed a savior from our sins, not a savior from the events of this world. Is a big difference. When Jesus was here on earth, he says one thing that upset, well, not one thing, many things that upset the Pharisees. But the thing that I'm remembering at this moment is that the people start telling Jesus, look at this beautiful temple. Look what everything that we've created here. And Jesus says, build this temple and I would destroy it in 3 days. And I would destroy it and in 3 days I will rebuild this temple. And the people thought that he was crazy because it took, back then it wasn't like now. Now they'll build a building like in 6 months they'll build a building. Yeah. But back then it would take 10, 20 years to build just one building. So I don't know exactly how long it took. And actually my Google people, maybe Jude, you could look up how long did it take the Israel people to build the second temple. You could look that up and we could find, I don't know exactly how long it took, but it took them a long time. Jesus is saying, I'm going to destroy this temple and build it in 3 days. It was just craziness. But what he was talking about is that he was going to destroy his own temple.
It says 46 years.
46 years. And he said that he was going to build it in 3 days. That's just, you can't, that's crazy. Now, Jesus said one more thing. He says, this place, I love Jerusalem. He cries for Jerusalem. He said, how many times did I want peace in Jerusalem? Do you guys know what Jerusalem, the name Jerusalem means? Jerusalem. Look it up. I do know, but we can look it up. What does Jerusalem mean? Jerusalem. That's how you say it. City of peace. The word shalom is the word for peace in Hebrew. And city is city of peace. And it just, to me, it's like so ironic because Jerusalem is anything but the city of peace. It's the opposite. It's been a lot of wars because of Israel and because of Jerusalem. Question?
This wasn't really a question, but I heard that Jerusalem's the most fought over place in the world.
That is true. But we could look it up. You could look at what is the most fought over city in Jerusalem. Not that you should believe Google all the time, but we could look it up. But that is a true statement. It's a true statement. Let me go.
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Google confirmed it, so it must be true.
It's off Wikipedia, though. It's off Wikipedia.
It's Wikipedia, but still, Wikipedia is still. But it is true. It is true. I want to go back a little bit to why Jerusalem, though, because like, why isn't it like Egypt, or why isn't it like New York City? Why isn't it Zimbabwe? Why isn't it like I don't know, Hong Kong? Like, why is it why is it Jerusalem? I'll give you a little bit historical. I kind of skipped over that a little bit. You know, when Abraham sacrificed, or was going to sacrifice Isaac, and God said, go sacrifice him? Yeah. He was going to go to this mountain, and the mountain that he was going to sacrifice him is the center of Jerusalem. It is where now is that mosque that they're always fighting for, the Wailing Wall. It is in that mountain where it happened. It is in that mountain. It's called the Wailing Wall because people go there and cry all the time. Then many years later, I don't know if you know this story. Do you guys remember when David was counting his army? Yeah. And because he counted his army, God said, you're not trusting me, you're trusting in your army. And God says, pick something. He says, pick something. Do you want your enemy to win over you, or do you want a plague to come over your people? My hand to be extended and for a plague to come over you. And David chooses, I'd rather be in your hands, so I would choose your hand. And God gave him a choice, and people started dying. It was mostly like a plague, like a COVID-19 kind of thing. It was a plague. And David goes to his prophets, and he says, listen, we are dying. Please intercede for us. We want to hear of God's voice. What can we do? Forgive me. Blame me. I'm the one that sinned, not the people, he says. So he goes to the prophets, and the prophets say, we do know what to do. Are you guys listening? Yes. Here's what you need to do. You need to go present an offering at this specific place. David goes, presents sacrifice at that specific place. He buys that specific place because it owns to somebody else. David buys it. He doesn't just take it. He buys that place. The place that he bought was the same exact place that Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. Is the same exact place. Is the same place that the mount is right now. The place what they're fighting for in Jerusalem that they always fight for. It's that same exact place. And again, it was God that told them where always to go. Why did God choose that specific place? I don't know. We'd have to ask him why? But that was chosen over and over again in the Bible. Question. Wow, you are ahead, because a lot of Jewish people believe that the dust from that place is what created Adam. And they actually call the cornerstone. Remember how Jesus said, I am the cornerstone? Uh-huh. The Jewish people have a belief that the cornerstone of the earth is in Jerusalem. That's a belief that they have. So when Jesus says, I am the cornerstone, he actually is referring to that same idea of the Jewish people saying that Jerusalem was the cornerstone. But he was like, no. I am the cornerstone of this whole place. Fast forward. We're going back to the place where did we left off at? Where Jesus is talking about the temple. He says this. He says, there's nothing here that's going to be left intact. Everything is going to get destroyed. He says the whole place is going to be destroyed. Jesus dies, and 70 years later, 70, the Romans have enough with the Israelites. Like, Jesus is gone. That's it. Jesus is gone. The apostles, most of them are dead already. 70 years after, they're dead. After that time, the Romans came in and they decimated. And this is history. You can look it up. Actually, let's look it up. Brooke, since you have the phone, you can look up when was Jerusalem destroyed by the Romans? What year was it destroyed by the Romans? They decimated Jerusalem, and they took all the Israelites, and they took them out of Jerusalem. 70 years after Christ. They took everybody out. And they destroyed Jerusalem. They destroyed it. There's drawn pictures of this. They destroyed Jerusalem. All the Israelites are taken away. All over the nations, they just take them away. It's not even captive. They just you just can't stay here. And they take them away from Jerusalem. From 70 AD all the way to World War II.
Wow.
which is 1948, the Israel people were taken out of Israel. They were not allowed to go back. They didn't allow them. People didn't even want them there. Now, what happened in World War II, as you know, is that they killed a lot of the Jewish people. So after World War II, the United Nations, they said this. They said Britain was the main one, but everybody was in accord to this. They said, let's allow the Israel people to go back to their countries. They don't really have a place. They're all over the place, and they don't have a place. Their places in Israel. They should have been there from the beginning. So let's let them go back. And we can look it up. Jude, you can look up what year was Israel, the nation of Israel, created. And I believe it's 1948.
Yeah.
And it was after World War II because of this. What year was the state of Israel created?
Yeah, it was 1948.
May 14th, 1948.
So let's subtract 1948 from 70, just to know how many years that Israel was not allowed in their land. How many years is that?
1,878.
There was 1,870 years that, 78 or 78? 78 that the Israelites were not allowed back in their land, even though it was theirs. So in 1,800 years, do you think there were other people living there?
Yeah.
Yes, there were. However, those people never became a country. Those people were not a nation. They were just random groups of people. It wasn't like here. Like here we have the nation of the United States. Below us we have Mexico. Above us we have Canada. And you have different places. But there, they had not created a country yet. They were just random people. So here's what happened. And here's where I'm starting to get to our actual time. In the state of Israel, I'm going to draw a rectangle. They said, we are going to, the countries agreed to this. We're going to create two states inside of that piece of land. We are going to create a piece, and this is not drawn to scale. We're going to create a piece. We're going to create a piece, and that piece is going to be called Israel. And we are going to let Israel people go back to that piece of land. And then everywhere around it, we're going to put pieces, and around it, and it is surrounding it, that places, we're going to group those people. And remember, they were not a nation. They were just like random people. Those people we're going to call Palestine. We're going to call these people Palestine. Okay? And all the nations agreed that this was a good idea. Good idea, bad idea, I don't know. However, the Palestine people, they started, and I guess maybe rightly so, because before that, there was maybe a Palestine person living here, and now they had to move out, right? Because they were in the part where Israel lived. So, but they kicked them out because they said, no, this is going to belong to Israel now. So they were not happy. They were not happy. Now, exactly when Israel was being created in 1948, I forgot the exact day, all the Muslim countries, all the Muslim believing countries, so Muslim is the people who follow the religion of Islam, right? And Islam, what they believe, they do believe in one God. They do believe in Abraham. They believe that Abraham is their father because he is. But what they wrongly believe is that Muhammad, their prophet, is bigger than Jesus, and that Jesus is just a prophet. They do believe in Jesus, that Jesus is real, but they believe that Jesus is just a prophet, and Muhammad is actually higher than Jesus. And the Muhammad is the real prophet. And that's what they believe. So there is some similarities, but very big differences. Very big differences. I'll take a question and I'll tell you another difference. Go ahead.
Where did they get Muhammad from?
Muhammad was a real person. Muhammad was a person that, a very smart man, I would say. And it's almost like he created his own religion. He knew of the Jewish people, and even in the Quran, and that's what I was going to talk about right now in a minute, the Quran is like their Bible. He says that the people of Israel are the chosen people. And he calls the Christians, because he knew of Christians were there already. He calls the Christians of the book. And they call Christians and Jewish people God's people. He calls us, Muhammad called us that. He wrote his own quote unquote book, and his own book is called the I forgot the name of it. The Quran. I just said it. The Quran. I've read the Quran. I wouldn't say for you to read it, but I've read it, and there's a lot of stuff that we could disseminate, but that's not what this class is about. Specifically, right now, we're talking about Israel. So going back to the Palestinians were Arabs, but there are more nations that are Arabic, and there are more nations that believe in Islam. So all those other nations, I'll name some: Iran, Iraq, Egypt, all those nations, they were backing up Palestine. And they said, we don't want this Israel to be there. Palestine people, we will back you up. And they went to war against Israel. And this happened, Judy could look it up. Look up the 7-Day War. What year was that? It's called the 7-Day War.
So it was just a week span?
A week span.
It was from June 25th to July 1st of 1862.
1862?
Yep.
What happened in 1862 is that all those countries decided to go against Israel. In 1 week, they were gonna destroy Israel. They're just gonna blank them off the map. Those countries that I just mentioned, all the Arabs, all the Muslims, they banded together. And there's a reason I'm telling you all of this. They all banded together, and they came against Israel, and they were gonna destroy them. Like, not even, no warning, no nothing, they were gonna destroy them. Israel didn't really have a big military at that time, and God protected them. There's actually several miracles that happened there that have been recorded. The Israelites didn't even have, they had tanks, but they didn't have ammunition. They didn't have ammunition, so they would put their tanks up, and the enemies, they would hear that the tanks were working and moving and blowing stuff up, but those tanks didn't even have gas. And the people and the enemies, they thought that those tanks were moving and shooting and throwing missiles, and they didn't even have gas or ammunition. And things like that happen in the Bible. If you remember with Gideon, that's exactly what happened with Gideon and all that. They attack them, but Israel prevails. Israel starts growing in strength. Israel has become very strong. Even nowadays, they say that Israel is probably one of the strongest countries, even though they're small. So many years have gone by, and this is what happened. This is why this war that I'm talking about is important. Is because in this war, when Israel won, and I'm telling you the truth, this is what happened. Israel actually won, and they expanded their territory. The Israelites expanded their territory, and the Palestinians became smaller. So instead of, it kind of backfired, is what happened. Instead of getting rid of Israel became bigger. And there was nothing that the nations could do because they won the war. They beat the other countries. You know, they won, so they couldn't do anything. So they got bigger, and here's where it starts getting crazy. These people right here become like a little strip of land, and that is what they call the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip. This part right here is kind of got separated, and this called right here is the West Bank. Okay? Over the years, many times, not one, these people have come over here and bombed Israel. They bomb them because they've been mad this whole time. But it's not a big war because it's like little bombs here, little bombs there. And who do you blame? Are you going to blame everybody, or you just blame the one person that did it? So you just blame the one person, and they're not going to kill everybody. So that's been going on for years and years and years. Because of that, if I was on the receiving end, what would I do? I mean, you keep on bombing me. What am I going to do? And this is what Israel has started to do many years ago. They created a wall here. Trump didn't come up with a build a wall thing. They build a wall. And they build a wall, and they only have access to like several points. Not too many. I think it's like 2 or 3 points that they could either come out or in. These Gaza people, they're locked in there. They're not fully locked in because they have the water, and they receive a lot of help from Egypt, from Syria, from Iran, from all the other countries that are Muslim like them. They help them out a lot. So they could still come in and out of the water. Israel still kind of blocks them, but they let them leave like that. But here, to come into here, they control this a lot. Israel controls this a lot. I'm telling you history. I don't want you to think of like it's a lie or anything. There's been a lot of reports that what they say that this is that this right here is a big, huge prison, is what it is, because they're locked in. But the idea of this is that if they were to leave them out, and every time they do leave them out, they do another bomb. They kill more people. So it's like, hey, yeah, I mean, you keep bombing us, we can't let you just go. It's a necessary thing because you keep bombing us, you keep destroying us. On the West Bank, they're a little bit more subdued. They have more entrances and exits. They let them come in a little bit. They're not as bad as here, but there is trouble that comes from here as well. I'll give you a personal story. This is a personal story. We went to Israel about 11 years ago. Personally, I went to Israel. And we were up here, by the way. Jesus was born here, Bethlehem. I'll put Bethlehem here, Bethlehem. But he was raised here in Nazareth. Okay? But the apostles and all of them, they all lived around here. They live right here. That's where they live. So most of the stuff that happens in the Bible either happened here or happened here. In Bethlehem and Jerusalem. Jerusalem is right here next to them. Okay? So when they're saying that they're walking or they're talking and they're in Nazareth or Capernaum, you know where Peter walked on water? That happened here on top. Okay? But Jerusalem is here. So how do you get from here to here? Well, they didn't have airplanes. They didn't have cars. The biggest thing that they had was horses and donkeys. But even the apostles, they didn't really have that much money. So what did they do? They walked everywhere. So the shortest route, and this is a geometry question, the shortest route from Capernaum to Jerusalem is a straight line, my geometry people. Is a straight line. However, this is a Bible thing. It happened in the Bible. There was times that the apostles, the disciples at that time, they were like, Jesus, we don't want to go to Samaria. That was here, the West Bank. We don't want to go there because that's where the other people are. The Samaritans were the people who were mixed, who were some Jewish people but mixed with other nations, and they didn't mix well. The woman at the well, she was from here. And the disciples, they didn't want to go through there. They wanted to go all around just to not go there. So they're just making their way harder. They wanted to make their way harder. So here's what I did. I said, I kind of want to go to that well. The well is like over here somewhere, like maybe right here. And I was like, this is a personal story. This happened to me. This is not a Bible story. This happened to me. I said, I want to go through that well. I just want to go through there. So I go, and there's a gate here, right here. There's a gate here in the top. There's like a police checkpoint. And you go there, and they, what business do you have? Oh, I just want to go. The Israel soldier said, you want to go where? I was like, oh, I'm going to Jerusalem, but I want to go to Jacob's well. He's like, why? I was like, because I just want to look at it. He's like, okay, He said, you could go. So he lets me go in. I go in, kid you not. And this is me, my wife, and Aurelie. Abby was not born yet. We're in the car, and we start going into the West Bank. I went into the West Bank. Aurelie went into the West Bank. She's just probably smart. She doesn't remember. So we go into the West Bank. We start going. This is I'm telling you, eyewitness. It was, think of like New York City, Times Square. Mm-hmm. Think of that with any zombie movie that you've seen before. Think of that with zombie movies. And that is what it was inside.
That's crazy.
People hitting each other. The cops were like not like pushing, like literally like hitting people, like move out the way. And New York City, you know how they have those, buy whatever, the latest thing. Instead of that, they had their martyrs, people with bombs that had died with guns, and that's what they had. That was their propaganda. So instead of New York City, think of that and like a zombie movie, literally. When we were in there was nothing in English. In Israel, things are in English, Arabic, and English. And Jewish, and Hebrew, Arabic, and English. All three, like the signs are in all three. But when you go into the West Bank, everything is in Arabic because no American is going there and no Jewish people is going there. So, well, you can, but let me finish my story. I was like, there is no way I don't even know where I'm going. Like, I can't even read the signs. So I do a U-turn, and I'm like, we got to go back. So we go back. We go only a little bit. Like, seriously, like it was like less than 8 blocks. We make a U-turn, and we start leaving. When we hit the checkpoint again, another cop or another soldier, Israel police officer is there. And he's like, where did you come from? Oh, we just went in there, but we didn't like it. We're going to go back. He's like, so how long were you there? Oh, just like, I don't know, like 20 minutes maybe. He's like, what did you go pick up then? I'm like, nothing. I don't know anybody there. You know, we just we're tourists. And he's like, nope. He's like, you're getting everything out your car. We're going to strip your car and just take everything out the car. So they start taking everything out my car. They take my passport and they pull us apart. They're taking luggage, everything apart, looking at what we're taking. At that same time, there's a lot of cars. An Israelite over there starts screaming, and they hit the sirens. And they start screaming, bomb, bomb, bomb. And the Israelites, the soldiers, they run towards the guy, including the guy that had my passport. Now, if you have been anywhere, if you've traveled, your passport is worth a lot more than money. Your passport is everything. If you lose your passport, you are stuck. You will not come back to the United States for a while. So the passport is way more important than money. So they take my wife, they take Aurelie, like soldiers, because remember, it was a bomb threat. Like, alarms are going away. They throw them, and they're trying to grab me too. They're trying to grab me, but I let go. And because I'm looking at the soldier with my passports. So they take them into a bunker, and I stayed out. And I have the soldier who has my passport. I have him. I'm looking at him. He's like, I'm not losing that guy.
I need my passport back.
No, I need my passport.
I'm not gonna lose that.
It's true story.
I need to come back.
So what happens is this. 2 minutes? All right, we got 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes. Like I said, we only 2 minutes. I'm going to try to finish everything in 2 minutes.
3, 2, 1, go.
What ended up happening is that the guy, he was like not complying with them. He was like mad. Because again, I understand that they are mad because they're kind of locked in. So they are mad. They have legitimate concerns. But the issue is if they leave them out, they bomb Israel. They keep killing Israelites. So don't act like that. But there's no way of going back. It was a false alarm, by the way. It was just that he was like fighting them, and they don't play there. They just crush it. So anyway, we ended up going around just like the disciples wanted.
Wow.
And we get to the other side, we get to Jerusalem. That's my story. But just to go back to the West Bank, and that's that the West Bank is not as bad as the Gaza Strip. So what happened on Saturday is, I know you guys mostly know what happened. They came in, and these people, again, they came in and they started killing a bunch of Israel people, innocent Israel people. People who were just at home, people who were doing nothing wrong, people who were just living their own lives. And I did want to read something because this is Bible class. This is in Ezekiel, okay? In Ezekiel 6. I'm going to go to 7 just because of time. It says, get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command. After many days, you will be called to arms. In future years, you will invade a land that has been recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They had been brought from all the nations, and now they live in the city in safety. You and all your troops and your many nations with you would advance like a storm, and you will be like a cloud covering the land. If you remember what happened on Saturday, these people from the Gaza Strip attacked a nation from many nations. Wait, don't go yet. There was people here, not just Jewish people that got killed. There was people from many nations that got killed. And they came in covering the skies with the paratrooper parachutes. Let me finish reading. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise a scheme. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. I will plunder and loot and turn my hand against this settled ruins, and people gathered from all the nations. This prophecy is exactly what happened on Saturday. Is exactly what happened on Saturday. So I'm telling you that biblical prophecy is happening on many levels, but it's happening right in front of our eyes. I will leave it there because there's way more stuff that could happen in the future like this. I'll leave you with this because I know it's crazy, but all these other people, they're protesting against Israel right now. They're pro-Palestine, and they're pro stuff that they killed innocent people. They are pro colleges at this moment. They are pro-Hamas. They are pro-Palestine, even though Palestine and Hamas killed a lot of people. And that's the times that we're living today. I'll see you guys next time.